Welcome back to the next lecture. Uh, and now, since we have understood the issue of climate change, and we have also understood the whole scenario, how it is evolving, what is very roughly, we have also understood what is the politics which is happening in the background of all this. We have understood the financially how world is handling it, and but the biggest take which I would want you to take from that for the rest of the course would be that it is actually the use of energy which is the highest carbon emission factor, and this we have also showed you through some of the data earlier, and now from at least for next few modules of this course, where I think next 4 or 5 modules, we will specifically focus now on the role of energy in overall climate dynamics, climate change aspects, what it does, why it does the way it does, what is being done in this sector, what can be done, and we will try to put these numbers in perspective. We will again use technology as the major uh, backbone of our discussion, but we will try to keep the technology discussions very simple. So and try to keep the discussions or narrative more towards policy driven or maybe societal driven. So we will try to move it in that line. So where we will begin in all this journey is that once we have understood that energy is responsible for this climate change, now let us understand that this energy climate nexus in some better numbers. Let us also understand the role of energy in human growth, and after understanding that, we will try to put things in perspective through a very simple equation known as Kaya identity. And it's a very simple way of understanding the whole interplay of various verticals on this or various aspects which impact the this aspect of energy and climate nexus, and we will try to understand it through this very simple and but beautiful equation, and we'll try to go deeper into that, what are the implications around it, and then what can be done potentially to handle this issue of climate change. So let us first look into what is energy. What is energy, how it has evolved, and how the global scenario of energy is changing in last few decades or last few centuries. So energy overall, as many of us will understand and many of us would like to understand, is basically an ability to do work. Whenever we are doing something, energy basically is the major thing which kind of enables us to do that work. The energy can come in various forms. It could be in heat form, it could be light form, it could be in motion form, it could be chemical, gravitational, whatever form energy is coming in, it is always enabling us to do some task which we will otherwise not be able to do in absence of energy. And that is the reason why energy has kind of become the basis of our life, because when we are trying to do some task, energy becomes the major factor behind whatever we are trying to do. And overall, energy is clubbed into two major buckets. One is the potential or the stored energy, whatever is the basic stored energy in a system. And once we use the energy, then working energy is known as the kinetic energy. So I'll not going deeper into physics of it, but just at a high level, you can understand that energy kind of forms the basis of all the major tasks that we do. So Richard Feynman, famous physicist, talks on this, that also it is important to realize in physics today that we have no knowledge of what energy is. What we simply understand is there is something which gets evolved from the system, and we don't know that how exactly it flows, how it forms, but what we understand is that it comes, he was able to quantify using the beautiful quantum mechanics phenomena, that it comes in little blobs of definitive amount, and he did some quantification of energy in that line, but we are not going to physics of that, so let us just skip it. But it was just for fun of physics. We should understand that it's a very fascinating subject to study further if somebody wants to go deeper into this. Now, energy, once we understand that the energy is needed, energy is so important, then what we understand that everything that we do, energy is kind of becomes the integral part of it. When we are moving, the mechanical energy is the one which kind of is the essential reason for that. When we are lighting a bulb or running a device, electrical energy is the one which is responsible for it. Water or wind wheels can also lead to some energy generation or energy consumption both. Sailing also needs some energy or generate some energy. Energy can come in various forms and shapes, and if you try to look deeper into our life aspects all around, whatever we do, somewhere we are always continuously using energy in some form or other. And if you just try to look in various aspects of our life, it is basically the foundational role of energy would be in form of functioning of industries, transportation, agriculture, households. They will use energy in directly or indirectly in multiple forms. It could be linked to productivity, competitiveness, national growth also at times. National security is also linked to energy resource at the time. Think of a scenario when energy is not available and you are deprived of doing any function for even for few minutes. Think of the frustrations which it can lead to. Whole of the industrial growth which has happened over last few decades or last few centuries has all been driven around energy, because it is the power machinery which has led to fast production, which has led to efficient production, which has led to production where we are able to make multiple units, multiple devices at a simultaneously. Whole manufacturing industry kind of revolve around the use of energy. Service industry is revolving around the use of energy. And basically, and what it does is that whenever we are looking for investment also to do in any region of place, what we always look for is that does that place have right infrastructure. And one of the major aspect of infrastructure that we are looking at that time is, do we have the right supply of energy with us or not. Similarly, on like not only on the manufacturing side or on the growth side, but also look at the transportation. The whole transportation phenomena or whole transportation mechanism changed with energy coming in. Be it be starting with the road transport, railway transport, air transport, maritime, any form of transport that you look into it, that all of them depend upon some or other form of energy, which is kind of kinetic energy, use of direct use of potential energy getting converted to kinetic energy and like it being used. Agriculture or food system, it requires energy for irrigation, mechanized farming, food processing, transport, or whatever is being done in agriculture sector also is all driven around some or other form of energy. Infrastructure development, like if you want to make any roads, you want to make any bridges, buildings, public utilities, all depends upon some or other form of energy. Overall, if you put that in perspective, whole aspect of human life and human development today revolves around use of energy, and that is why it is not a surprise that 75% of our emission today comes from the use of energy, because energy kind of becomes the basis of our life somewhere or other. Like it is water. Sometimes we don't give enough appreciation to what role energy plays in our life, but it is a kind of a backbone which kind of runs through the whole system. It is driving the whole system in a way. So and if you look at the human growth also, or human development, human race development started with the invent of energy. What was the first big invention as per you which happened in human life? It was the invention of fire. And fire is in a way the big source of energy, which was for decades, which was the biggest source of energy which we had. So fire was the civilization's first great energy invention, and wood was the main fuel for a long time. So it is around that thing that it started. Second was probably the invention of wheel or pulley system, which was the second biggest thing. And if you look at it, that effectively that is also big source of mechanical energy, like using rotational energy and pulley energy system is became the kind of second biggest invention which of the humankind, and that was also related to some form of energy that we had. Uh, and if you go back to history till about late 17th century or earlier 18th century, these were primarily the basis of the overall energy system that we were using, because we were either using uh, wheels as the mode of transport, like it was bullock carts or horse carts or whatever was the mean of transport which was there, because there was no mechanized transportation, and they all used to depend upon motion of wheel and use of mechanical energy from the source which was there, as in form of either bull or horse or whatever was the animal which was being used there, or sometimes humans also. And fire was the major source of all the form of energies that we were consuming at that time, be it for cooking, be it for lighting purpose. Like all the lighting phenomena also used to work around fire systems only. So these two things were kind of basis of our life for till about late 17th century. Uh, it was and it's not that other forms of energy were not known at that time. So like there has been some literature which has said that electricity was kind of looked into at 600 BC, where a Greek scientist, when they rubbed ember on the with silk, it became charged and it object. So he originally had developed this phenomena of static electricity back in 600 BC. In 1600 AD also, there was a British scientist which first coined the term electricity from electron, and which is the Greek word for amber. So Gilbert wrote about a lot of electrification of many substances, and he was the first person to use electric forces, magnetic pole, and electrical attentions. For petrol also, or for oil also, there had been discussions where in 3000 BCs there was some people have who has indicated of finding some traces of rock oil, and in some of the tasks that they were carrying out. In 2000 BC also, Chinese refined crude oil was used for lighting and some heating purpose. Natural gas was also identified in 200 BC, where Chinese used natural gas to make salt from salt water. Brine process in gas-fired evaporators, it was used. In 1626 AD, a French explorer discovered Native American burning gases that was seeping in and around Lake Erie. So overall, it's in bits and pieces. The modern form of energy were also identified in the past. Why they were not used in bulk? Because what changed in 1750 or 1800s was how you could extract these sources in a more efficient way. You can extract them into quantities which are enough to use them into the mainstream life. So remember, biomass was the biggest source of energy till that point of time, in form of firewoods. They were available in abundance at that time, and it was only when we scientists could find out the right way of extracting coal and using coal late in 17th century or early 18th century. That's where the massive use of coal started to come into picture, for two big reasons. One, we could find a very efficient way of extracting coal, and second, the coal energy density was much higher than compared to the wood sources which are available at the time. So it kind of became a very dispensable energy which could be transported from one place to another in form of just some black magic was transported from one place to another in form of coal, and energy could be transported from one place to another, and it was just that invention which led to this massive use of coal at that time. So just to kind of repeat on that, till I already talked about this, that biomass and or the muscle power age was till up to 1850 or maybe around 1800s. Like 1850 will be kind of a bit stretched, uh, but around 1750 or 1700 the coal started coming into picture. But household till that time depended primarily on firewood, dried manure for cooking and heating purpose, human or animal power, along with windmills or water wheels, were either it was fire based, or it was wheel based, which was primarily the source of energy till that point of time. When the renewable energy in form of some windmills were being used, that was primarily people have learned how to use wheel to do that job. And it was only in the early 16th or 17th century when uh, population started to grow, cities started to build up, or some bigger bigger localities started to come up where the wood started to come in shortage, and fuel prices started to look up. That people started to look for alternative, like so. But specifically, it was the UK scientists who started to look for alternatives at that time, because Europe was really doing well on science at that time. So it was from 1700 or in 1700s that coal started coming into picture, and coal emerged as a much more cheaper source of energy at that time. Then in around 1840, 5% of global energy was coming from coal, which grew very fast, and about 1900, in just in about 60 70 years, 50% of the world energy moved to coal based energy, because it was, as I said earlier, that it was used, it was available in abundance. People find out the way to extract the coal rightly, and with the right extraction, and also the processing industry which kind of developed at the same time. Remember, another thing which happened at the same time was that steam engine came into picture, which was central of industrial revolution, and that entirely depended on coal. With multiple aspects around it, the coal transportation became cheaper, coal use became much cheaper, and since its energy density was higher than wood, So people started to move on to coal as a major source of energy. So coal started powering factories, railways, ships, urban heating. Everything started to move to coal very quickly around that time. A very fascinating reading you can do in Energy and Civilization and History. I've given the reference here, so you can. It's a very fascinating reading of that time. From that time, then how the things started moving to oil. That oil was like, it was not that the oil was not discovered before, but the use of oil became primarily, oil was earlier used primarily into kerosene lamps. Like it was just in kerosene lamp the oil was used, but it was the invention of the IC engine or automobile mass production, through which the transportation industry drastically changed from bullock cart or horse cart based transportation based system to motorized system. And since people could travel distances much faster, people could travel distances between cities in a much more efficient manner, there the use of oil became very abundant, and oil reached about 5% of global supplies by 1915. And it was after World War II, when global mobility boomed, that oil became the dominant force for transportation, logistics, and mechanized agriculture. So oil kind of becomes the whole backbone of the whole total transport industry, is what started going around oil. Natural gas came much later, and it was only the invention of Bunsen burner and development of pipeline infrastructure system, which made gas a suitable form of use at home and industrial use. And gas was about 5% in 1930, and which reached to about 25% by 1985. So the growth of gas has been much slower compared to coal and oil, and because supply of gas is still limited, and it's gas, as you will see, the growth has not been that great. And one thing which also has led to this is that energy density of gas is not as high as some of the oil sources is, and since it is trying to replace oil at a lot of places, so it kind of came as a limited thing. But having said that, it is mostly the supply chain of gases which is kind of a limiting factor in the whole thing. But nonetheless, it has become very popular for heating, cooking, and water heating specifically. And more than replacing oil, it has replaced coal in household sector at a lot of places, specifically in Europe or part of Northern America, that it started replacing coal at a lot of places. And with this, what happened was that coal started losing its place to few of the things, that it was replaced by natural gas and electricity for home heating. So while electricity was also primarily being made from coal, but having said that, at least the direct use of coal reduced drastically with the technologies developing around natural gas and electricity based heating for the home system. For transportation, it was primarily replaced by oil. But as I said, for electricity generation, this remained as the major source. For heavy industries, it was a major source of energy almost through most of the 20th century. And we will look into that, how numbers are changing, what is the dependence of world on coal still. And so overall, if you look at this energy transition over last 200 years, how it has evolved is that it has primarily been driven by three factors. One was the resource pressure, that wood decrease started when cities started to grow or the localities started to grow, and where people started finding it difficult to source enough amount of biomass or wood which was needed for the running of those places. That's where the whole focus on first the coal came into picture. The second biggest thing which has led to this whole use of energy has been the technology breakthrough with the invention of steam engine. Coal started to get used in huge abundance around that time. IC engine led to the use of oil in abundance, and gas burners led to use of natural gases as the source of energy. So, and the third thing was economic efficiency, as I said, that because it was not that coal was not known before, oil was not known before, or natural gas was not known before. They were known before. It was just that the economies of scale were not there, process efficiencies were not there, extraction was very expensive, and it was only development of technology will led to kind of reducing the price of extraction, reducing the price of processing, and which kind of made the use of these sources much more economically viable. And that's how the whole journey started. So if you look at the whole transition, how it has taken place. So if you start looking at 1800s, so 1800s traditional biomass used to be the biggest source of energy, and which kind of dropped drastically up to 1940 from about 98%, almost the 100% of the energy which was around a single source of energy, and dropped to almost 31% or 30 around that by 1940s. And same time, what happened was the coal kind of grew drastically up. If you look at that, coal grew from almost 1.7% to almost 50% of energy mix was coming from coal. So very, very rapid growth of coal in just this 140 years that was seen. Then once coal kind of reached its peak, at that same time oil started to come up. And if you look at this graph, so it was primarily the biofuel which was there, and it was only around 1850s, or it is around 1900 that the coal took as a major source of energy, surpassing biomass. Then parallelly, oil started to rise around early 1900s with the invent of IC engine, and oil kind of overtook coal as a major source of energy around 1960 or so, when transportation kind of became much bigger. And if you look at here, so coal started to decline around 1950s with as I said earlier, that people started using natural gas or electricity at home for heating, or for water heating, or for direct use. And oil started to rapidly, because of the transportation, or the whole transportation industry basically, which started to revolve around the use of oil as the big thing. And parallelly, natural gas also started to replace. Primarily, it was replacing coal, then replacing oil as such. Right? There have been some replacement of oil by natural gas, like CNG replacing some of the coming in the vehicles. But as you can see, that it is not used in abundance. It is still primarily oil dependent industry only. So if you look at today's scenario, or at least it was updated up to 2000, oil used to be the most dominant factor, with followed by coal and natural gas as the second biggest source. And graph is changing on a rapid basis. Biomass at least used to be a kind of a major source till up to that point of time, which is reducing drastically further. And furthermore, nuclear energy, hydro energy, and we will look into these sources further, hydro energy. And now recently renewable energy also is coming into picture a lot. So we will look into this further, that after this period how things have evolved further. But if you look at it overall, there has been a very clear shift or interplay of sources which has taken place over last few centuries. And just to kind of put things in a different perspective, another thing it can be attached to is that the whole energy growth can actually be linked to some or other major invention which has taken place, or industrial innovation which has taken place. If you look at it, so it was steam engine which led to the first growth of the energy which kind of started coming into the picture. Then it was use of electrical motor or gasoline engine which led to this whole increase in oil. Then it was the burner which kind of came into picture, and it started increasing the gas part of it. But along with this, you will see that whenever a major shift or major invention in the industry was made, you can see the slope of the curve also changing a lot. Like, so it was commercial aviation. As soon as it came into picture, you can see this slope of the curve changing a lot. Nuclear energy, like microchips coming into picture, you can see the slope of the curve changing a lot. So it was also along with the resources changing, it was also the invention which was taking place in parallel, which was leading to all this sudden change in the slope, or sudden more use of energy per person, or per capita, which was very evident with the invention of technology. You look at the use of internet, which was leading to much higher resources consumption suddenly, because then suddenly people needed more power to kind of manage the whole use of internet, and use of power needed to run that internet on a continuous basis. So having understood that, now let us start looking into some of the resources which is used for generating this energy. So primarily they are divided into two major halves. One is non-renewable energy sources, and second one is renewable energy sources. What are non-renewable energy sources? Primarily all the petroleum energy sources, hydrocarbon gas liquids, natural gas, coal, nuclear energy, they all fall into the non-renewable energy sources. What do we mean by non-energy sources? Is that they are basically defined by their limited availability, and their reserves are not renewable in a time frame compared to their consumption. So they are consumed much faster then they can be renewed as sources. So effectively, when we are using coal, when we are using oil, when we are using natural gas, when we are using any form of non-renewable energy sources, we are consuming them faster compared to the time frame in which they could be replenished or they could be refilled into the system. When we are talking about system, it is primarily the earth crust from where we are getting these sources primarily. So all of them are available under earth somewhere, and we find out technology to extract them. But what has happened is that when we are consuming them faster than earth can rebuild those sources for us. So it is not only that they are leading to emissions, but they are also perishable. They also are limited in resources, and they are also limited in terms of the amount of time frame they will be available for. Coal and petroleum and natural gas are categorized as fossil fuel because they were formed for millions of years for buried organic chemicals from ancient marine plants and animals, and we will look into their emission factors. But that is a separate subject altogether, which will come into a few slides. What basically happens is that these buried organic remains, which are buried under the ground, multiple layers, their extremely long geological time scale is required for formation of these sources, and they cannot be replenished in a human interface time, and which I've already mentioned this point. So nuclear energy, which derives primarily from uranium, is also a non-renewable energy sources, because here also the material is consumed, and material is not produced inorganically. Material is produced in nature. So it is billions of years ago that uranium kind of evolved, or it originated millions of years ago, and it is it's not abundant that big a quantity. Right kind of uranium is available in a very limited amount of quantity, which for our use, and that's why it is also coming in a non-renewable energy sources. The sources which are termed as renewable energy sources include solar energy from sun, geothermal energy from heat inside the earth, wind energy, biomass from plants, or hydropower from the flowing water. Basic definition for renewable energy is that it can be renewed in the time frame it is being consumed. So we consume sun energy in the day, next day sun is again available for us to consume. We consume wind, and we convert that into that mechanical energy, some form of electrical energy, or some other form, and then next day, or maybe the next hour or the next minute, wind is again available for us to be consumed as a form of energy. Similarly is for water which is flowing, similarly for biomass from plants up to an extent. Not It's not an infinite thing, but still biomass from plants is available in abundance also to certain extent. So but plants keep on growing, and if we don't cut them, or if we grow them in enough in number, they could potentially be renewable energy sources also. So overall, any source of energy which kind of rebuild itself within the time duration of consumption is known as a renewable energy source, and which cannot rebuild itself during the time of consumption is known as non-renewable energy source. And so which is primary category. I've already defined these categories here, and I'm not talking about emission factor of them yet, but it is interesting to note that most of the non-renewable energy sources are high emission sources, except from nuclear energy source, and most of the renewable energy sources are low emission sources, apart from the biomass consumption, directly burning of biomass consumption. So it's a very interesting play which is also there. So it is categorized that if we make a shift from non-renewable energy sources to renewable energy sources, we are moving from dirty sources of energy to cleaner sources of energy. That is another distinguished kind of a category that we have started talking about recently a lot. And reason for that, and I'll kind of conclude my presentation here today, but just kind of on the conclusion side, it is the carbon intensity of various energy sources, which is also very interesting to note, and we will talk more about this in next class. That if you look at the gram of CO2 which each of these sources produce for generating per kilowatt of energy, we have normalized it for per kilowatt of energy, which is the electrical energy unit, but we just normalize it for that. If you look at it, the coal is the dirtiest form of energy, because that produces the highest amount of carbon dioxide for per kilowatt of energy, which is for producing per kilowatt of energy. Oil is the second dirtiest one, then natural gas, and it is then any form of current sources which we are talking about a lot these days: solar photovoltaic, wind energy, hydro energy. All of them are much cleaner form of energy compared to these three major forms of energy which we have consumed over last 200 years, as we saw that almost 80% of the world kind of depends upon consumption of these three sources as the prime source of energy as of today. And it is only recently that we started moving to the other sources of energy which are much more cleaner form of energy. And we will look into these numbers much deeper when we go to them as a technology later on. But just for understanding, the world has moved very fast on energy consumption over last 200 years, as world learned to extract coal better, world learned to how to consume oil better, how to extract oil better, how to refine oil better, and how to use gas through a very interesting burner technology. World started to consume these sources a lot because these are very dispensable source of energy which could be transported from one place to another place in a very efficient manner, and energy density also is very high for all these sources. So the world started to consume them a lot. But as you can see from this graph also, so while world started consuming them a lot, one, they were as we discussed a couple of slides back, they are non-renewable, so they will perish if world continue to consume them on the rate it is consuming right now. And as very evident from this slide, they are not at all clean sources of energy, as they emit a lot of carbon dioxide per kilowatt of energy consumption. We'll look deeper into these numbers and that how world is evolving of late around these numbers. Thank you.